city's going to make you required to do two different things. They're either going to make you required to do an external stairs to this level, or you could do a sprinkler system. And I don't like having stairs where a robber could just go up the house and then they can break in through here because nobody's going to see them doing that. That's why we also like eliminating doors in basements. If you talk to cops, they always like getting rid of that door because that's the first door that a robber's going to break in because they're blocked off from people. It's the same idea. I don't want people coming upstairs and then they're blocked off and then they can come in through here and break in. So it was important for us, and that's why we did a sprinkler system. And Juan can talk more about the construction.
Yeah, you know what's funny is when we were trying to make that decision, there was a break-in here in Bucktown. I don't know if you guys, it was on the news, but there was a guy standing on a staircase looking down at a couple in their house. They caught it on their camera. So it was right when we were making that decision, and my wife's like, you better put a sprinkler system in there. So, you know, so that's just something there. But yeah, this one, there's a lot of firsts for us on this house. Doing completely, you know, doing the brick is a first, so we didn't have a sub for that. We had guys who do tuck pointing and stuff, but you know, and they could do brick, they said, but I didn't feel confident with the level that we needed to do, so we had to find a new brick guy. And then the other thing that we have to do here that's different, well, the sprinkler system, so we had to quickly find somebody because the architect didn't tell us that we needed it. They gave us blueprints and everything, and we were getting bids, getting everything lined up. And then, like 3 or 4 days before submitting the permit, they're like, "Oh, by the way, you're going to either need to do the stairs or the sprinkler system." Thanks. You know, so that kind of threw our budget off a little bit. And then the other thing that we have to do that we haven't done is do an actual whole house speaker system. You know, normally we do the Cat 5, we do Cat 6 just to future-proof it, and then cable. So now for this one, we're gonna have to put speakers in each bedroom and run the wires for that. So it's no big deal, and then cameras, security cameras too are big here in Bucktown. So Josh and I went around and looked at a bunch of comms, and we're like, okay, we gotta do this, you know. So that's the other thing when you're looking at the neighborhood, make sure you're matching at least what the neighborhood requires for you to, you know, if you're looking to get top dollar, you better provide what the neighborhood requires. And I wouldn't even go necessarily above and beyond that, maybe just 1 or 2 additional features, and that's it. You don't want to go too crazy, you know, because now you start setting a precedent that people are going to expect that all the time, and pretty soon your costs keep going up, you know. So again, you got to be wise about that. Don't go too crazy, but don't go too cheap. And that's the thing we find is a lot of investors go too cheap, you know, because you have these budgets and you get a house and it really doesn't work with the budget. And, you know, a lot of Fortune Builder students tend to fall into that category, you know. So just be careful with that because, you know, we're taught to negotiate with our contractors. So the thing is, you think you're going to get it cheaper than anyone else, but you're not. Because other builders are doing it for as cheap as they can too. So, you know, just know that you're not, so they're getting wholesale pricing just like you. And if they're at a certain price point, you're probably going to be at that as too for construction. So don't think because someone else is building for this amount that you're going to be able to do it for cheaper. More than likely you're not, and then you'll get yourself into trouble. So that's just, you know, one thing, be careful. You know, you're given this information through Fortune Builders and other education systems, but just make sure, yeah, you know, you're not the only builder in the area, and that's, you know.
Talk about like getting 5 bids.
Yeah. So the other thing is we recommend to get at least 5 bids for GC. For subs, you could maybe go down to 3, you know, but at least try to get 5 bids with general contractors. And you pitch out the lowest price, you pitch out the highest price, and try to find the guys that are in the middle. And you know, I'm saying this now, pitch out the low price, but you guys are going to be tempted to take the lowest price because you want the most profit and all that. But the reality is it will end up costing you more in the end because of change orders and everything else that they will probably bring their way. And typically, then what happens is the timelines slow down because they don't have enough, as you're paying them, they don't have the money to pay their subs. The other issue you run into is then so your project goes over the timeline again because they're not paying their subs because they're not getting enough money, and so it just becomes a mess. And I know just in the past month of 3 investors that have had GCs walk off their jobs, and I can tell you why they walked off their jobs. They underbid the jobs. And I had put in bids on a couple of these jobs. They said I was too high, and I said, well, you know, there's a reason why I have these costs. I know what they are, and you know, it's not going to be a surprise. And I always include everything. The thing is, like, you know, some investors try to get away from not doing the water service, so they don't budget that. Budget it. Put it in your budget, you know, because if you end up having to do it, it's not a surprise. And then it costs more money if the city comes in and now you've got the drywall up, because sometimes they won't catch it at the rough end. They'll catch it at when you're doing the final inspection. So you've got the house done, and now you got to open up walls, you got to bust up the concrete, and it's just like, so something that would have cost you $15,000 now ends up costing you $25,000. You know, like, so when you try to do your budget, I mean, I can't stress that enough. I mean, we learned the hard way, you know, because we're like, oh, we'll get it done cheaper than anyone else. You know, but sometimes we could, but most of the time we were at about average for the industry for other people that do what we're doing. I'm not comparing it to homeowners. You're always going to get it done cheaper than a homeowner, but when it comes to the industry, labor can only be so much, and guys are only going to work at a certain price. I mean, when you think of your job, would you take your job for less than you're making? That's the same with the plumber, it's the same with the electrician, the framer. So you have to understand that they too need to make a buck. So, you know, there are certain, you know, unless you're hiring people that are making $2 an hour, you know, so anyway, so that's important, you know, like really make sure that your prices are accurate, and do not go with the cheapest price. Do not, as much as if the numbers don't work, don't go with the deal. If you have a coach and he tells you or she tells you not to do the deal, don't do the deal just to do a deal. I mean, you're going to get yourself into trouble. Okay, so it's just you know, for us, one of the things that Josh and I really feel is important, we want to be real about this, because we feel a lot of stuff that's told sometimes is fluff, you know, and for us, we want to share what's real, what we've experienced, and you know, so when I say that, I just, you know,
speaking from experience.
Experience, yeah.
And money lost.
You know, yeah, because here's the thing, we got these bids from these GCs, and so after that, we never finished the project, so we didn't know what the final budget was going to be. So we bought other houses based on those budgets. So now it's like this chain effect, you know. So
and then if you got to fire one GC for multiple jobs, it's not an easy thing. That's why I recommend, if you get a GC who gives you a great price and you guys hit it off and you guys are best friends, they still got to prove himself on one job from the very beginning, no matter how much you like them, because things will change very quickly once they don't do it for that, the price they quote you. From the very beginning all the way to the very end, once a GC proves himself on one job that they can do it, then I recommend, then you can give them 2 jobs. They prove themselves, then you can give them 3. But until you've fully done a job with the GC from A to Z, never give them more than 1 job.
As much as it's tempting, it's so tempting, because the work to find a guy takes a lot of effort, a lot of your time. But if you, again, it goes back to that planning. The more time you make sure you're doing the right things up front, the less headaches you're going to have later on. Not to say you're not going to have headaches, because you're always going to have headaches in construction. It never goes the way you want it to. But you want to eliminate that issue as much as possible. So if that means you got to find another GC because you got 2 projects, find another GC. You know, it's too critical. And you know, we've told this to people, and then they go up and give this guy 2 or 3 jobs, and then they come back to us telling us, oh, this, and it's like, yeah, I mean, don't take the easy way out. Let's just put it that way. Do your work. This is not a hobby. That's the other thing, mindset. It's not a hobby. This is a profession. I remember Josh and I were going to go to a conference for fortune builders out in California. And my mom's like, oh, there you go again, going on another trip. I can't believe it. Well, you just wasted your money, you know. So she was like, and I finally told her, because my sister was traveling with her husband, was traveling all over the country to raise money. They're missionaries, and so they were raising money. And so my mom was all ecstatic about that. You know, oh, they're doing something good, da 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 da. And you know, they're doing, and so they're traveling all over the country, way more than Josh and I were traveling. I'm like, Mom, why don't you give them a hard time for doing what they're doing? I said, this is what I do. This is my job. This is, you know, because at that point, I don't think we were full-time, but we were getting close. And you know, after that, she's actually very supportive and very impressed with, you know, what we do. So that's the thing, is even your mindset has to make sure this isn't just a hobby. Ultimately, you're doing this for your financial well-being, for your family, and potentially to hand down a legacy. So you have to treat it that way. Take it serious, even take it more serious than your job. You know, it's very critical, because things could go very bad very quick in this if you don't take it that way, because I mean, budgets, timelines, safety issues, you know, you name it. So so yeah, this house, just a little history on this one. We were initially going to do a rehab, and so we got it, and it looked like the previous owner had put in like a fake foundation, so we thought it had a foundation. And again, that's, so you got a surprise there, right? I mean, it's always going to happen. So now we actually dig down before we close. We'll bust up the concrete and make sure that there is actually something down there. So anyways, we busted it up. Okay, so we're gonna spend 20 grand to underpin and put in a foundation, this and that. But our ARV would stay the same, so we wouldn't be able to sell it for more. So then Josh and I talked it over, like, hey, you know, the comps are pretty good in this area. It's Bucktown. We have a great view of the city if we were to go up nice and high. Let's do a new construction. So that's where we transitioned this over to new construction. So we did probably the smallest new construction in the area, but we're very close to these other ones that claim they're 4,200 square feet. We just, so this is where, okay, it's Bucktown. We drove around, all the comps show brick. Never done brick before. So, you know, so it was just a lot of that. So we went with this, and so we hired a new architect, and I just love the flow of this, the way he designed it.
The stairs in the back.
The stairs in the back. This is the first house we've done that with that feature. And we're finding those houses that have it and it's executed well tend to get 5% more on their sales price.
What was the original purchase price of the property?
We were at 400. And then the construction on this, it's a higher square foot price. It's going to be about $450 for construction for 3,000 square feet. So that comes out to about $1.40 to $1.50 a square foot.
The resale is 1.2 to 1.3.
Yeah. So, and then
if we're at 1.2, we're the cheapest new construction in the area. Like, people are listed at 1.5, 1.4. So 1.2 is like a fire sale.
Yeah. And one of the things that drove up our cost, the reason for that big price increase per square foot is brick. We didn't know what the cost would be to do that, but just to give you an idea, to do siding on this size house, to do vinyl would be about 10 to 12 depending, you know, or 10 to 15 depending on the quality of the vinyl that you're using. You could even get it done for less if you know, you're looking to cut some corners and stuff on the quality of material. And then to do hardy board, it's going to be roughly about 20 to 25,000. And so pretty much triple it to quadruple it from there to do brick. So, because not only on this, not only are we doing the brick then, but in here we're doing hardy board. So this whole deck area is going to be hardy board. We're actually putting an actual deck here. So that's jacking up the price, you know. So that's, when you get into these high-end homes, you know, that's where you're doing $1.50 a square foot, you know. So you have to be realistic again. You know, we were going back and forth with our bank on these numbers because they didn't like our numbers, and so we had to keep coming up with, you know, again, you have to build what's in the market, Our appliances just on this house are probably going to be 30 grand. You know, but that's what the market dictates. It's we'll put 42-inch wide, you know, stove with the hood and all that stuff. So built-in fridge, you know. So that's where a lot of your price just starts going. You know, that right there. So $30,000 and a 3,000 square foot home. That's $10 a square foot just from the appliance, just changing it from a $2,500 appliance package to a $30,000 appliance package. You just shot up your price per square foot $9 a square foot. Just that. You see how quick it could increase? And then the hardwood floors throughout, plus the deck up here. So the brick on this, just so you know, when I said quadruple, we found a guy. It's a little bit over triple the price, so we're going to be at about $80,000 just for the brickwork. And that was, he was middle of the road as far as, he was a little on the lower to middle price, but I went in, again,
You don't want to do hire a cheap brick guy and then
yeah.
one looks like, you know,
Um,
doesn't look like a